Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcasting network, where we're proud to bring you your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll be dishing out grades now that we've hit the halfway point of the season. I'll also take a quick look back at my preseason predictions and then get into a recap of the 2026 World Junior Championship. Lots of good stuff to get into here on the show today, Blackhawks fans. So let's not waste any time and go and jump right in with the pair of games over the weekend, pair of wins over the weekend, I should say. The Blackhawks are now at the midway point of the 25-26 campaign. That means it's time for some midseason grades plus midseason prospect rankings and deep dive 4.0, which will be coming out here in the next couple of days. So lots of fun content that I hope you all are looking forward to now that we've reached that halfway point. Starting today, though, with those grades, I'm going to go over somewhat quickly just because I will be having a deep dive 4.0 coming out here soon. And that is the show where I dive a little bit deeper, of course, into the stats, analytics, and everything in between for every player on the roster. And that'll probably be, like a 45 minute-ish show. So want to keep the time down a little bit here on today's episode. So going to go through these players relatively quickly, but we'll be dishing out a grade to each and every player that's suited up in at least 21 of the opening 42 games here this year. And make sure to let me know in the comment section whether you agree or disagree with any of these grades that I'm going to be handing out. Starting first with the Blackhawks forward group, kicking things off, number 98, Connor Bedard, who, by the way, we did get a very promising update on here today at Blackhawks practice, and I promise I'll be discussing that on the show that drops early tomorrow morning, where I'll also be previewing the third matchup of the season against the rival St. Louis Blues, so be on the lookout for that as well. Just got enough to cover here on today's show already, but Bedard, starting things off, has played, of course, in 31 of the Blackhawks' first 42 games this season, 19 goals, 25 assists for 44 points. He's still tied for 22nd in the league in scoring despite missing the last 11 games. And before suffering the injury, Bedard had basically done everything we wanted to see from him in his third NHL season. The skating, the more responsible defensive play, being better at the faceoff dot, has won 47% of his draws, has a +8 plus-minus rating, has just really improved the defensive side of his game as well as gotten faster. His playmaking looks better. The goal scoring has taken an uptick. He was right in the mix for both the scoring lead and the league lead in goals before getting hurt as well. So I don't know how I give Connor Bedard anything else but an A+ for the first half of the 25-26 season. Next up, we get to the Junkyard Dog, number 59, Tyler Bertuzzi, who in 39 games is now the Blackhawks' leading scorer. Yes, he has passed Connor Bedard officially after recording his second hat trick of the season in Sunday's win over the Vegas Golden Knights. That now gives him 22 goals in his opening 39 games, along with 12 assists for 34 points. And what's really impressed me about Bertuzzi, not only that he's picked up the slack after being a little bit quiet in those first few games without Bedard, but a lot of it has come from the even strength variety. And when Bedard was healthy, a lot of the goals that Bertuzzi was scoring were coming on the man advantage. Well, now he has 14 even strength goals on the year. That's tied for Bedard for the most on the team. He's also tied for 10th in the NHL in goals overall. Looks well on pace to reach 30 for the first time as an NHLer and maybe even crack 40. The only reason I'm not going to give Bertuzzi an A+ and I'm just going to give him a flat A is because of that 5-game ice-cold stretch where the Blackhawks offense needed more from him. He had no points and was a -11. And then also he's still not a huge play driver because his playmaking isn't a strength of his game, but with the energy that he provides, the hustle, the dirty work that'll give you in front of the net and along the boards, in addition to the incredible goal scoring that he's given the Blackhawks this year, Tyler Bertuzzi deserves an A for the first half of the season. Next up, we get to Andre Burakovsky, who suited up in 37 games. He has 9 goals, 19 assists for 28 points, and his speed, along with his size, since Bedard and Nazar have gone down, has been really needed, as well as his playmaking, which honestly has been better than I expected. However, the goal scoring, I do think, has been a little bit disappointing for Burakovsky. Burakovsky, and those two have kind of flip-flopped. I thought he was going to be more so a goal scorer for the Blackhawks as opposed to a playmaker. And I do think the Hawks overall could use him shooting the puck a little bit more, but it's still been a better start to his Blackhawks tenure than I expected out of Andre Burakovsky, quite honestly. I don't know if you all feel the same way, but because of that, I'm going to give him a flat B for his first half. Next, we get to the other injured center for the Blackhawks, number 91, Frank Nazar. He's played in 33 of the 42 games, missed the last 7, I want to say, 7 or 6. 6 or 7. Of course, that happens when I'm discussing Frank Nazar. Was not intentional, Blackhawks fans. My goodness, that's never going to end, is it? Regardless, Nazar has missed the last stretch of games since taking a puck to the face back on December 20th against the Ottawa Senators. But in his 33 games played this year, he has 6 goals, 15 assists for 21 points, also has won 43.1% of his faceoffs, was off to a roaring start to the season, right? Was the leading scorer for the Blackhawks in the opening, 10 to 12 games of the year. But I just really feel like that injury that he suffered early on against the Calgary Flames, he really hasn't been the same player ever since. And then when he was just finally starting to find his footing, that's when he gets hit in the face with the puck early in the first period in that game against the Senators. So kind of unfortunate there, but still, as a 21-year-old in his first full NHL campaign, Nazar has 21 points in 33 games. And all things considered, I still think he's played pretty solid hockey. In stretches, definitely a little bit earlier, but for a 21-year-old, I think he's been just fine. Without a lot of experience as an undersized center who's still kind of figuring it out, not only in the NHL, but at the professional level in general. So because of that, I'm going to give Frankie Nazar a flat B. Let me know in the comment section below if you think that's too high, that's too low, or if that's just right. Next up, we get to Teuvo Teravainen, who I've called out a lot here on the show in the first half of the season, but has picked up his play over the last 4 games. 3 goals during that stretch now gives him 9. In addition to the 11 assists that he has, gives him 20 points in his opening 41 games. However, only 10 of those 20 points have come from the even strength variety and still only has 50 shots on goal in 41 games. The Blackhawks need him to step up and just be a more aggressive player. And that's always been my real key knock on Teravainen. If you've watched or listened to the show for a long time, then you know he just kind of rubs me the wrong way with his passive style of play and not being aggressive with or without the puck on his stick. So all things considered, I was going to give Teuvo probably a C- or a flat C, but because of the uptick in offense and goal scoring recently, I'm going to give him a C+. Next, we get to Ryan Donato, who's played in all 42 games for the Blackhawks this year, has 10 goals, not quite scoring at the same rate as he did last year, although he was obviously getting a much greater opportunity. Not as much here this season, mostly in the bottom 6. 8 assists for 18 points. Does have only 2 power play points, so 16 of those 18 points in 42 games have come at even strength. He's been more productive at 5-on-5 than Teuvo Teravainen has been, and I do appreciate Donato's well-rounded game and how he puts the puck on net frequently. Teuvo Teravainen could take a page out of his playbook, so I'm going to give Donato a C+ for his performance this year. I knew he wasn't going to get the same opportunity as he did last year, so what he's done recently is right around what I kind of expected. Next, we get to Ryan Green, the rookie, who's impressively also played in all 42 games for the Blackhawks this year, and I thought has done a pretty good job bouncing between different roles. 4 goals, 11 assists for 15 points, has had a ton of scoring opportunities, but almost in a similar fashion to Frankie Nazar last year, kind of like Oliver Green. Not all that, different from what you see from rookies at times when they first step onto the big league scene. Green just hasn't been able to get that finished product, but I think the amount of opportunities that he generates and how well he's stepped up playing in a top line role at times, playing in a defensive role at times, he's been asked to do a lot as a young player, and I've thought he's handled that really well and has a plus minus rating. Has some of the better analytics on the Blackhawks, has won 44.8% of his draws, which is pretty solid for a rookie overall. So because of all that, I'm going to give Ryan Green a flat B. I've been pretty impressed from what I've seen from him in his first half of his career as an NHLer. His first half of a season as an NHLer, I should say. Next up, we get to Ilya Mikheyev, 38 games played, 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points. Not known for his offense, but can chip in and give you a little bit production. And he's been doing that recently, which has been really key, riding a 3-game point streak at the moment. Also, of course, one of the best shorthanded forwards, seriously, in the entire NHL. always hounding down opposing puck carriers. Love how he uses his speed to eliminate both time and space for his opponents out there, and has been a huge part of the Blackhawks PK being in, the top 10 of the league for the entire season. So even though the offense isn't at the level it was last year, I think that was to be expected as well for Mikheyev, and he's done his part defensively. So I'm going to give him a flat B. Then we get to another rookie, Oliver Moore, who, believe it or not, has played in 30 of the 42 games, for the Blackhawks so far this year. Only has 3 goals, does have 8 assists for 11 points. I wish the goal scoring was a little bit more prevalent out of Oliver Moore so far, but his wheels, when he is going right, have been really impactful. And I think it's just about raising that baseline and finding that consistently a little bit more often, which, again, isn't too atypical for a young player in this league. So I'm going to give Oliver Moore a flat B- for his performance this season in the first half. Still not a really big sample size, but I think he's shown enough to be encouraged about long-term, both offensively and on the defensive side of things as well with his swift skating. Then we get to Jason Dickinson, who's been banged up a few times this season. He's only played in 29 of the Blackhawks' first 42 games. 4 goals, 4 assists for 8 points. I knew, Dickinson wasn't going to be a regular 20-goal scorer for the Blackhawks like he did a couple of seasons ago. Below the 50% Mendoza line at the faceoff dot, 48.0% as well. It's been an all right year out of Dickinson. I know it's not really in his control, but it's kind of been frustrating that he's been in and out of the lineup so regularly. And while I hate to kind of gauge him on that, just the way things kind of go. So ultimately, I'm going to give Jason Dickinson a flat C. Maybe even I would understand giving him a C-. Hasn't really stood out all too much. However, that's not always a bad thing for his style of play, because defensively, he's often going up against the opponent's top offensive weapons. So I understand he's not a flashy player whatsoever. I think he's just been fine for the Blackhawks this year. Then the last forward, Colton Dach, has played in 42 games, 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points. Obviously not much of an offensive contributor, which isn't too surprising. Is 4th in the NHL, though, with 149 hits. And I love his physicality, and I also love the response he's given the Blackhawks after they told him not too long ago that he needs to be more of a pest. He needs to use his size to his advantage more often. And he's certainly answered that call so far here this year. I'm going to give Colton Dach a C+, because ultimately this is kind of the role that I envisioned him playing for the Blackhawks, stepping in and being that physical forward that can throw his body around, because the Hawks don't really have a lot of that elsewhere. So I think Colton Dach has stepped up and found himself a nice niche role for Chicago down on that 4th line. And that's kind of what he needed to do, I thought, in order to be a puzzle piece as part of this rebuild. All right, getting into the defensemen now here real quick. Starting things off, number 55, Artyom Levshunov, yet another rookie for the Blackhawks this season, played in 40 of the 42 games, has been healthy scratched a couple of different times, but feels like he's responded to those pretty well altogether. And while he definitely still has things to figure out defensively, yes, if you watch the Blackhawks, that's pretty obvious. Well, if you also watch the Blackhawks, it's pretty obvious that Artie already knows how to handle himself pretty effectively in the offensive zone. And the Blackhawks have really needed that out of him defensively, especially given a guy that I'll get into here in just a second, Sam Rinzel. Had a little bit of a letdown in the first half of his rookie campaign. Levshunov has kind of stepped up and been the offensive defenseman, and I think a lot of people expected Sammy Rinzel here to be this season, as Levshunov has 2 goals and 18 assists for 20 points. Definitely has given himself enough chances to have more than 2 goals this year. Some unfortunate puck luck. Feels like he hits the post every other game, or maybe every 3rd game or something like that. Could easily have more than 2, but leads all Blackhawks defensemen with 18 assists on the season. That's also 2nd among all Blackhawks skaters, behind only Connor Bedard, averaging 18 minutes and 26 seconds, of time on ice as a 20-year-old. Really good stuff out of Artyom Levshunov offensively. Yes, there's still room to grow, but that's, again, standard for more so offensive-minded defensemen as a young player in this league. So I'm going to give Artyom Levshunov a B Let me know if you agree with that, Blackhawks fans, in the comments section. Next up, we get to Louis Crevier, number 46, who, believe it or not, is the second leading point getter among all Blackhawks defensemen this year. 3 goals, 9 assists for 12 points in 41 games played. Has kind of cooled off offensively as of late, but I've thought defensively all season long. He's been pretty solid for the most part. Has a +1, ± rating while averaging 15 minutes and 29 seconds of time on ice. Still not being used as like a standard top pairing defenseman, but the Blackhawks use him a lot in defensive situations and still found a way to produce offensively and have a pretty solid year for the most part in his own zone. So ultimately, considering the expectations that I had for Louis Crevier going into the season, I'm going to give him a B+ for being the second leading scorer among all Blackhawks defensemen and stepping into that top pairing role. Then we get to Wyatt Kaiser, number 44. 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points in his 42 games played. Has really stepped it up offensively here as of late, which has definitely been needed. Defensively, for the most part, especially his play in transition against opposing puck carriers is really good. Uses an active stick, uses his wheels. Also, for not being the biggest guy, knows how to use his body effectively. I've been thrilled with what I've seen from Wyatt Kaiser, and I feel like he's been the Blackhawks' best all-around defenseman this year, while averaging 19 minutes and 12 seconds of time on ice. I'm going to give him an A-. The only thing holding me back is he was a little bit too quiet offensively in the early going before kind of picking it up here in the last couple of weeks. Next, we get to Alex Vlasic. 41 games played, 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points. Not really worried all that much about the offensive contributions from Alex Vlasic, but I do feel like up until these last couple of weeks, where especially these last 6 games, he and Vlasic, I feel like have been really, him and Crevier, have been really good with one another. I thought it was just kind of a ho-hum start to the year for Alex Vlasic, averaging 21 minutes and 7 seconds of time on ice, still being utilized as the top pairing D-man in a major role for the team. I'm going to give Alex Vlasic a B-. Really curious, though, Blackhawks fans, if you feel like that's harsh or if that's spot on. I feel like he's just been all right for the Blackhawks this year up until recently. Then we get to Matt Grzelcyk. Played in all 42 games for the Blackhawks so far this year, which is impressive in and alone of itself. No goals for Grzelcyk yet, but has chipped in for 8 assists. That accounts for all 8 of his points. Has a +1, ± rating while averaging 16 minutes and 54 seconds of time on ice. And quite honestly, well, I probably would have expected him to have a little bit more production offensively. He also hasn't been as bad as I expected him to be on the defensive side of things. So I've been pretty happy with Matt Grzelcyk overall. Has, not been as good as of late as he was earlier on in the season, but I'm still going to give him a C+. Then I am going to be giving out a grade for Sam Rinzel, as he's played in 28 of the opening 42 games this year. Of course, though, is currently down in the AHL with the Rockford Ice Hogs. But in those 28 games played, 1 goal, 7 assists for 8 points out of Rinzel. Okay offensive production, but still probably not what you were expecting, while he was also dealing with some struggles on the defensive side of things. Averaging 16 minutes and 32 seconds of time on ice. That really took a dip in those last couple of weeks before being reassigned. And just considering the expectations, which, look, might have been a little bit too unfair for Rinzel based on a 9-game sample size from late last year, but we saw the kind of defenseman that he looked like late in the season and just really didn't look the same in his opening 28 contests. And because of that, I'm going to give Sam Rinzel a C-. Not going to knock him too hard because he is still only 21 or 22 years old, but still wasn't the level of play that I think we all thought he was going to play at as a rookie. And then last but certainly not least, on the blue line, Connor Murphy, 42 games played, no goals yet, just like Grzelcyk, but does have 6 assists, -5 ± rating, which really isn't all that bad considering he plays mostly in defensive situations, averaging 15 minutes and 44 seconds of time on ice, the smallest role that he's ever really played as an NHLer. I thought he's been okay, not really a ton to notice, but kind of like Jason Dickinson, not always a bad thing for the style that Murphy plays. I'm just going to give him a flat C. And then in that, Spencer Knight, 12, 11, and 6, 2.60 goals against, 910 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. I can really only think of 2, maybe 3 bad games off the top of my head that he's had so far this year. Because of that, I'm going to give him a flat A. And then last but certainly not least, Arvid Soderblom, 5, 7, and 1. Been a roller coaster ride so far, like it always seems to be with him. 3.87 goals against average, 873 save percentage. I'm going to give Arvid a C- just because, well, he really hasn't been that far from what I anticipated. I do think there have been some bright spots. It's just that, once again, his bads have been really bad, and he just isn't giving you a level of consistency. And now that we're in 2026, he's going to be 27 years old this summer. It's like his fourth season in the National Hockey League. It's like, do we ever expect it to happen? I really don't at this point. So ultimately, while I do think Soderblom has bounced back nicely these last couple of games, I think he's still worthy of that C-. And if you said D+, I wouldn't have really argued against you. All right, that takes care of my Blackhawks mid-season grades. Hit me up in the comment section below. Let me know who I had too high, who I had too low, who you agree with, disagree with, everything in between. Coming up in just a moment here, I'll recap 2 Blackhawks prospects battling against one another in the World Junior Championship final last night. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can be overwhelming. Between subscriptions that you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down those hidden fees? Well, that's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I love personally how it tracks all of my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service reps and numbers. So let Rocket Money help you reach financial goals faster. Go and join rocketmoney.com/lockedon right now. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Before I get into segment 2, just want to say thank you again to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. A reminder to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow and rate and review wherever you may be listening to your podcast. And also be on the lookout for my Blackhawks mid-season prospect rankings. That will be a 2-parter that's getting dropped here in the next couple of days. And you won't want to miss who comes in my top 5, top 10, and my top 20 prospects in the entire Blackhawks pipelines. Segment 2, though, here today, the 2026 World Junior Championship wrapped up last night in Minnesota with 2 Blackhawks prospects battling against one another for the gold medal. Anton Frondell, of course, the 3rd overall draft pick in the 2025 NHL draft. In Sweden, we're hunting for their first gold medal since 2012, while Vaslav Nestrasil, another member of the 2025 draft class for Chicago, taken 25th overall, he was playing for his native country of Czechia, who hadn't come away with the title since all the way back in 2001, and both of those teams had tremendous tournaments leading up to the final, but ultimately in the end, Anton Frondell in Sweden walked away with the 4-2 win to snatch up the gold for the first time in 14 years. And ultimately, I did think with what was unveiling throughout the World Junior Championship, Sweden was the best team, and they were the rightful winners of this tournament, going unbeaten in their 7 games played, a perfect 7-0-0. Did have, of course, that shootout victory against Finland in the semifinal, where Anton Frondell, of course, played a big part. And I'm sure that was a huge reason why Frondell ultimately was not only named as one of Sweden's top 3 players in the tournament, was not just named to the media all-star team, but he was also named as the best forward, period, in the entire World Junior Championship as an 18-year-old with 8 points, 5 goals and 3 assists in 7 games played. Wasn't the leading scorer on his team, though, and I do feel like he was somewhat, even if I am, a Blackhawks fan here, somewhat controversially given the best forward award in this tournament. Ivar Stenberg as a draft-eligible player was absolutely unbelievable for the Swedes and had an awesome gold medal game. Jack Berglund, who's a prospect for the Philadelphia Flyers and was the captain of the Swedes, he tied Stenberg for the most points on Team Sweden. Viggo Bjork, who's another 2026 draft class player, was phenomenal for the Swedes as well. He had 1 more point than Frondell did, but I do think Frondell, even though he was pointless in the gold medal game, stepped up in some really key moments for the Swedes, scored some really big goals with just an absolute clap bomb of a one-timer from the right dot. His 5 goals were also second most in the tournament, behind only Porter Martone of Team Canada. And then, like I said earlier, scored that super clutch shootout winner for Sweden in the semifinals against Finland. His 3rd opportunity in the shootout, by the way, which I love that Sweden was confident enough to keep throwing him back out there. And I thought Sweden was going to get double doinked because on Frondell's second shootout attempt in vintage Cody Parkey fashion, which still a little bit too soon in my opinion, but Frondell goes double post and out in his second shootout attempt. Fortunately, gets back to him for a third try, and he makes no mistake on this one to send Sweden to the gold medal game where, like I mentioned, they, of course, ended up defeating Václav Nestrasil and Team Czechia. But for Frondell, I mean, I don't know how you come away from this tournament feeling anything other than excited about his future with the Blackhawks, right? The two-way play that he provides also as a top liner for Sweden is a huge reason why he still won the best forward award in this tournament. Obviously, his two-way play was talked about going into the draft. He just plays winning style of hockey, right? And obviously helped Djurgården in the 24-25 season get elevated to the SHL as a young man. He's been a key member of their team once again here. Big part of Sweden coming away with their first gold medal at the World Juniors in the last 14 years. And then he has that absolute howitzer over at the right Dow, which has a lot of us thinking about being paired up with Connor Bedard on the power play or potentially on the top line together. Sure looks like Frondell can be a pretty darn good goal scorer at the next level and does a really good job of getting his shot off. He had 31 shots on net in this tournament, which was the second most of any player. So really impressive stuff from Anton Frondell, gold medal, the media all-star team, and of course, as I mentioned, the best forward as an 18-year-old, still going to be eligible to return for Sweden next year, but feels pretty likely that he's going to be making the jump to pro hockey, and if that happens, pretty good chance the Blackhawks won't let him return. But getting to Václav Nestrasil and Czechia, who unfortunately, yes, fell short, but have plenty of reasons to hold their head high. I mean, Czechia has now medaled. They've hit the podium in 4 years in a row, which is more than any other country can say during that stretch. They have two silver medals, in those 4 years, and have knocked out Canada now in 3 consecutive World Juniors. So, lot to be positive about in terms of the future of Czech hockey. And Václav Nestrasil was another point per game player above a point per game player as a Blackhawks prospect in this tournament, just like Frondell was. 8 points, 2 goals, and 6 assists for Nestrasil in the tournament while skating the entire time on the Czechs' top line. I thought for being a player of his size, he showed off his skill. I mean, some of those no-look passes and the no-look shots that he pulled off, as well as his play in transition, and then using his size along the boards and his playmaking overall, I thought looked pretty good. So I think you have to be excited about Václav Nestrasil's potential as well, based on how good he's looked as a freshman and how well he played in this tournament. Again, as another 18-year-old, he'll also be able to return for Czechia next year, which they could have a absolutely lethal team returning possibly. And then don't want to leave out the third and final Blackhawks prospect in the tournament. He just unfortunately didn't play in the championship game last night. That was AJ Spellici, who suited up for the red, white, and blue. And I thought he showed why, despite not having the highest offensive ceiling, he is a very unique prospect in the Blackhawks system and has a legitimate chance of being a key piece of the puzzle long-term, because with his size and with his skating ability, he is an absolute runaway freight train out there as an athletic freak, never afraid of shying away from contact, uses his size and speed on the penalty kill and defensively pretty effectively as well, and has, some creativity potential because of how fast he can fly out there on the ice, and had 4 points, 1 goal, 3 assists in 5 tournament games, mostly playing as the team's fourth line center. So in my opinion, 3 thumbs up for the Chicago Blackhawks prospects that took part in this tournament. The United States, unfortunately, didn't give it too good of a run for the three-peat as they were knocked out in the quarterfinals by Finland in overtime. But ultimately, if you tuned into my preview of the World Juniors, then I didn't really think the United States quite had the same roster that they did these last 2 years, particularly on defense and in goal. And even James Higgins, wasn't as impactful as I thought he was going to be. Same with Cole Yzerman and some of those other big-time Americans. So wasn't the most surprising result in the world. To me, though, I did think Canada was going to come away with the gold. I figured they were going to take down Czechia in the semifinals and then best Sweden in the championship game. But again, some of their top prospects, while I thought Gavin McKenna had a pretty darn good tournament And don't worry, Blackhawks fans, I will be talking more about the 2026 World Juniors in the next couple of days, as well as I'll be discussing all the 2026 high-end draft prospects that played in the tournament. Mentioned a couple of them already. Gavin McKenna is absolutely one of them. Michael Hage was really good for the Canadians as well, but Michael Misa, I thought, had a really disappointing tournament compared to at least how well I thought he was going to play. And shoot, let me tell you, Anton Frondell had a better tournament than Michael Misa, which awesome news for all of us Blackhawks fans. But a disappointing result once again for Canada. We know it's gold medal or bust for them this time of the year. But a lot of fun, as always, was this year's World Junior Championship. What a showing for Anton Frondell. Well, I thought both Václav Nestersil and AJ Spellisy gave us Blackhawks fans signs to be encouraged about regarding their futures. All right, coming up in just a moment, before I wrap up today's episode, still want to take a quick look back at my Blackhawks predictions that I dished out before the start of the year. Segment 3, let's look back at those season predictions that I gave out all the way back on October 6th, just about 3 months ago now, right before the start of the regular season, when the Blackhawks faced off with the two-time defending champion Florida Panthers. And let's see if I was spot on, dead wrong, or somewhere in the middle with all of these. Make sure to let me know your reactions to all of them down below in the comment section. First and foremost, and I even admitted at the time this wasn't my boldest prediction that I gave out, but I did say it was absolutely going to be Connor Bedard's first 80-point campaign in the NHL and his first 30-goal season as well. And, well, unfortunately, yeah, he's been out these last couple of weeks. Still looks well on his way to eclipse both of those totals. 19 goals, along with 25 assists for 44 points in 31 games. Still believe he's going to hit 80 points. He's going to be over a point per game player, and will be interesting ultimately to see how many goals he comes away with exactly. As I mentioned, had 19 and 31 before suffering that injury. My second bold prediction that I gave out on the show back on October 6th, what was it? It was that the Blackhawks are going to finish top 5 in the NHL in shorthanded goals. They were 14th last year. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who of course Jeff Blashill was the assistant coach for, was in charge of their penalty kill unit. Tampa Bay was 3rd in the NHL in shorties. And just with the Blackhawks' speed that they have with their penalty killers, as well as Blashill's kind of aggressive system, I knew it was going to take a little bit of time, but honestly, the Hawks PK has been solid all year. Maybe haven't generated as many chances as I expected, though, while shorthanded. Frank Nazar being out recently definitely impacts that, though. The Hawks are still tied for 14th in the NHL with 3 shorthanded goals, and only 2 back from being top 5, as it's a pretty crowded pack. Los Angeles Kings, I believe, lead the way with 8 shorthanded tallies at this point in time. So still a long way to go on that one, and I feel like the Blackhawks top 5 might not be likely, but I do ultimately expect them to finish inside the top 10. Next, we get to Tyler Bertuzzi. I said he was going to net 55 points for the second time in his NHL career. I might have lowballed Tyler Bertuzzi because he's already got 34 and 39 games. His production should only kick up once Connor Bedard returns. I had a feeling that Jeff Blashill coming back, and even considering it was kind of a down year last year for Bertuzzi, still hit 23 goals, still had 46 points. I thought he and Bedard, the better that Bedard gets, they're going to click more and more. That's exactly what's played out. One of my better takes here is I think Bertuzzi could even hit 60 points for the second time in his NHL career. My number 4 prediction that I gave out was that Laurent Brossoit was going to play in an NHL game. I've been close. He's played in a handful of AHL games now for the Ice Hogs, but doesn't feel all that likely that he's ever going to get called up by Chicago unless... Don't want Spencer Knight to go down. Arvid Soderblom did have some struggles there for a little bit, but his last 2 starts, he's kind of cleaned it up, as I mentioned a moment ago, and because of that, I don't even really think Brossoit getting called up is in consideration any longer. So, yeah, might be wrong on this one, as I've been wrong about Brossoit a lot of times in these bold predictions. My number 5 prediction was Frankie Nazar cracking Team USA. Fortunate. I do feel like that injury really killed all of his momentum early on. Probably still wasn't going to end up on the United States Olympic roster, but one of my bolder predictions that I gave out, I did think it was going to be a real big year out of Frankie, and was well on his way to doing so before getting hurt against the Flames. Number 6, I said Dickinson, Mikheyev, Murphy, and Lafferty all get traded, but Nick Foligno stays and will remain captain for another season. I think this is going to be a pretty good take. I do believe Dickinson and Murphy are going to get traded, probably Sam Lafferty as well. I do think Nick Foligno is going to come back for another year. I think he's going to take a team-friendly, short, one-year contract. I think it makes sense to keep him as the captain for another year. No need to rush Connor Bedard into that bad boy, even though, yes, ultimately he could probably handle the situation as a captain. I still feel like it's a little bit early for that personally. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that down below in the comments. But I think the one real interesting one is Ilya Mikheyev. I kind of feel like Oliver Moore can not do exactly what Ilya Mikheyev can do right now defensively. He's still not quite there, but I feel like it's close enough. And Mikheyev, while the Hawks don't need the return, I do wonder if it's just a forward spot that the Blackhawks want to open up for some of these additional young players that are going to be arriving on the scene these next couple of years. Really interested to see what they wind up doing with Ilya Mikheyev, but I feel like this was a pretty good prediction here overall. Number 7, I feel like another good one. I said Oliver Moore will play in 50 NHL games this season. He's already at 30, and we got a whole nother half to go, and don't really see him going back down to Rockford with the way that he's performed. Even if it has been inconsistent, I still believe he deserves to be an NHLer right now. Then we get to number 8. I said Kevin Korchinski will play in less than 5 NHL games, which I thought was pretty bold. I feel like Korchinski has played well, but I just don't know how the Blackhawks are going to give him room on that left-hand side. And, of course, hasn't played any NHL games so far this season. Number 9, I said Sasha Boisvert makes his NHL debut and scores his first NHL goal. Just has not been the sophomore season at BU that I expected it to be for Sasha. He has been dealing with injuries and been a little bit banged up. Tynan Lawrence, 2026 top NHL draft prospect, is actually going to be joining Boisvert and the Terriers for the remainder of the 25-26 season. Maybe that helps get Boisvert going, but honestly, just given the way things have gone for Sasha, I do wonder if he ultimately returns for his junior campaign and his final season of college hockey with BU. Then, at number 10, last but certainly not least, I feel like another good one here, Hawks fans. Still, obviously, another half to go, but I said Wyatt Kaiser will lead all Blackhawks defensemen in even strength goals. And considering they had Artyom Levshunov, considering they had Sam Rinzel, considering they added Matt Grzelcyk, all three of those guys known for their offense, I feel like this has been a pretty good one, and Kaiser does lead all Blackhawks defensemen in even strength goals right now. All 4 of his tallies have come from the even strength variety, and Louis Crevier is the next closest Blackhawks defenseman with 2. So interested to see how this one is going to go down the second half of the season. But that takes care of my look back at my preseason bold predictions and also wraps up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. If you stuck with me all the way until the very end, know I appreciate you, and you're an absolute real one. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. If you want to check me out on socials, you can do so at Jack Bushman 2, my Strictly Blackhawks account. That's at Talkin' Hockey. Give that a follow so you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, I'll be getting into the Connor Bedard news. I'll be having part 1 of my Blackhawks midseason prospect rankings and more. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.